Welcome back. Okay, so if you haven't already, please browse to your website. So we want to be on the front end, so your main domain here. And the first thing we're going to do before we get into editing pages is I'm going to change the front page of the website from being this version to the other version. Now, if you like this one better, feel free to keep it in here. You can use this one, and really the actions are just the same. But if you do want to follow along, please follow me in changing this to the other page. So what I'm going to do is click on my dashboard here, and I'm going to go down to Settings and Reading. Okay, underneath here, underneath Settings and Readings, it's going to ask me which page do I want as my front page. Well, right now it's set to Home Simple, and I'm actually going to set it to Home Default. Okay, and once I've done that, I'm going to save the changes. What that'll do is it's going to use a different page up here in Pages to be my front page. So once I've done that, I can view my front page, and now it has a different front end than I had before, and I have a bunch more different options here. So this is the one that we're going to start off creating or editing or updating. Depending on how best you work, some people like to go into their internal pages and do all the design work there and then come to the initial front page with a lot more ideas that they might have gained from the other pages. We're going to start with this page and hopefully give us some inspiration for the rest of our website. So to get started, just like before, we're going to go ahead and update or edit with Visual Composer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit with Visual Composer. And that's going to bring up the Visual Composer interface. And again, like before, we know we're in the Visual Composer interface when it has this blue bar up at the top. So before we get started, hopefully you did this from the previous video where we saved this template. So I saved this one as Home Original Rev Slider. So I went here, I typed in the name and saved it. That way, if I make any mistakes, I can always come back to the start of where I was before, or I can append the old template onto what I'm doing here. So there's all kinds of cool things you can do by clicking this plus sign. Or if I'm wanting to add a whole new template, I can click this and I can add it, and it will add that whole template, either append it to what exists here, or it can or I can just completely refresh it back to the way it was before. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this top part here for later, because I have a video specifically on doing sliders. So we're going to wait for this. It's a little bit more involved because there's a lot of different options that you can do with that. So we're just going to leave that part of it, and we're going to go down here to this first element section here. So this is obviously, it looks like steps towards making an order. So if this is not an element that you want to keep, this whole section here, you can hover your mouse over here where it has this trash can here to delete. You can see kind of where it ends. This is where this where the dotted line goes. So I can click on that and it will completely remove all of these elements. Another thing I can do is actually go into this element and edit it. So as I hover my mouse over, you'll see that there's a little green bar here, and it says a call to action. A call to action is, if I click up on this new element here, I have all these different options, and in here there's going to be one called a call to action. So let's see if I can find it. This one right here. So this is the one that we're going to be that they're using for this. Okay, so to edit it, I'm going to click Edit the Call Action. Okay, and so I'm going to be a new dialog is going to open for me, and so here it is. Now this is what's called a Wysiwyg Editor, or What You See is What You Get editor. So anything I do here, like for instance, just like in a normal word processor, if I highlight my mouse over here and click bold, it's going to bold that. So if I saved it, it should bold in here. And so as you can see, it's actually bolded the browse. Okay, so each of these elements are, each of these buttons are all buttons on the Wysiwyg editor that allows me to make changes to the content of inside here. So if I wanted to change this, and let's say I really like the way this particular element looks like, all I need to do is change what they had in there by default and then make some edits up here. So if I wanted to do italic, bold, or italicize something, I can do that. There's also different pre-formatting I can do on some of this. So for instance, if I wanted to highlight over that and change this to a heading level 2, oh, it'll do the whole one, which I don't think we want to do. Let's see if I enter it, and there. Okay, let's save changes and see what that actually did here. You see down here, now it had this few clicks down here. So just ways of being able to edit the text that's in here and make it look good. There's also other things in a Wysiwyg editor. I'll just put that back. Is sometimes they give you extra options that what you would normally see. Like if I hover my mouse, it tells me what it is. So links, this stuff is default. So adding a link, like if I wanted to add a link here, I can highlight that text and put the URL where I want this to go, you know, and it could be on your website somewhere. So wherever that, and it's going to give you a suggestion on pages maybe that are in your website, or these are probably blog posts, and you can just click on them, or you can put the whole URL. Like if you wanted somebody to go to google.ca or .com, you can put that in there, okay, and that will have a link to Google. Over here is stuff that didn't exist normally in a Wysiwyg editor, and it looks like these are from plugins like this 360 Smart Product Viewer or Slider Revolution Shortcode Creator. The one thing I wanted to see over here is some themes have built-in shortcodes. Now remember we did if you followed me on the optional video on creating that dynamic thing at the top of the page, we created a shortcode. So here's an example of a shortcode right here with the little square brackets around it. So this is making this read more button down here. So if I change this, I can say, you know, here, right, it will change this, what this button text says. And I just realized that I made a mistake here. It came up as button, but really it's because I didn't have this quote in the right place. It should be right there. And so that should fix. There we go. So this changes the button text here. So there's all kinds of different shortcodes I can use that is built in to your system if they have them here. So we can do a divider. So we can do a short divider there, and that's automatically creates one of these lines. So if I save it, it might create a line here to separate them. So you can barely see it, it's faint here, but there's a line. So if I want to spruce it up a bit, I can do that. Now when we open this dialog, it automatically brought us down to this Wysiwyg editor. But actually, and there's no real indication that they've done it, is they've actually brought us down lower. So if I use my scroll wheel, I can actually scroll in and out. And I think it's because this window was really far over. You can actually drag these windows around, and now you can actually see I've got a scroll bar here that I can scroll up. And there was some other settings up here that we have not yet taken advantage of. So I can move this over to where I can see this element and make changes. So we have this 01, that's that. The make order, that's the title there. And of course, how I want the text alignment to be. So you can do all kinds of cool things. Like if I wanted a rounded shape, maybe I put this and I think it'll just round out the corners a slight bit, which it did. Just a little bit rounded corners on there. So you can see these are square and then these are rounded. So you can do all kinds of things. So let's see what happens when I do round. So it's really going to round out, make it almost like a little bit of a pill shape. So, and you know what, I don't mind that round, so I might actually do that on each one of them. Okay, so you can go through and actually just test these and see what you like. see if you like a different color. So they give you some colors here. If I wanted to change it from white to orange as an example, you can do that. Let's see how that changes it. So it makes this orange. And of course that might not be the best to use for that because we've chosen a light. When we're doing the theme settings in an earlier video, we had chosen a sort of a grayish background. So you probably want to stick to more neutrally kind of colors or something like that. So and maybe grays or darker grays, light ones. This, I don't know how this would look, but it's kind of a browny gray. So if I wanted to make this color, I could do that. Okay, so I'm just going to stick with the white. I think it looks good. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to show you is something that is very valuable tool. Most of these websites, especially the ones that are flexible, the ones that you can see on a mobile device or on your desktop, and they look good either way, they shrink in nice, is using what's a tool called Font Awesome. It comes default with a lot of these shrinking sites. Now you can test it. Some websites aren't compatible with it by default, but let's just check to see if it is. I'm going to show you how to do that. The link will be down in the description, but I have it up here. This website called fontawesome.io is a website that you can browse to, and in here they have actually created basically little icons, and they act like a font. So what you can do is once you've gone here, you click on icons, and it's going to give you a list of all bunch of cool little icons here that we can use on our website. So you can test and see if it will actually work. So for instance, let's look for one around searching for a product or something like that. Let's see if we can find something that would indicate looking for a product. So maybe this one, right? And we can copy this code. So I clicked on that. It's opened up in here in the details. Now what we want looking for is this little bit of code here. We can copy that. Okay, so this I thing here, and that's how it works. So what I can do is go back to my page, and I'm actually going to put it in the place. See where it says 01 here? I'm actually going to highlight it and just paste that there. So it's going to look like this. Okay, I'm going to click Save Changes. Okay, now it's put this little I here. So that's nice. And you can do that with, so let's say, scope your product. Okay, here. And we'll save that. Scope your product. There you go. So, and all I'm doing is I'm going off the theme that they put here. Of course, when I'm actually creating the website, which I will change these to, what I think would look good, I would obviously make this a little bit different. I'm just using their example here as a way to show you how you can change these and how you can make it look cool. You can also put text at the end of this. So you can even do this, that $01, there we go, and let's see what happens when I do that. So there. So I can put the text at the end of it if I wanted to. So each of these fields are editable, and you can put whatever you want inside of them. In here is the heading, and there's no heading, which is the title up above here, but you can add a link to a custom heading, which we're not going to do, but you would put in a URL here. Let's say you're putting this, and okay, and I've clicked on the page because it automatically brings up pages and products and all kinds of stuff. So if I did that and I save the changes, let's see what it looks like. See, it's changed this I here, and it's put in happy customers. So that's now a link, that I. That's exactly what that thing just did. So it just what it did is this heading up here is it turned it into a link instead of it just being an I or some text or something. Okay, so that's what that did. So to get rid of it, we can just delete this stuff out of here and click Set Link. Now it's nothing. So when I save it, when I hover over it, this I is not going to go anywhere. Okay. This is the font size. This is probably the font size of the header here. So this one, and its height. So these are different ways of doing height. So you can play around with that. Like if you wanted a little bit bigger, you can do, say, this and there. So all it did is it changed the size here because I'm using an I. But I think if I put in how they had before, you can see it's bigger. It's bigger. Oh, maybe it isn't. It's actually the line height that I was updating here. Oh yeah, sorry, it was the line height. I apologize. So I'm going to put that back down there. So it's the line height smaller, but I can change this to being bigger. So let's say 6. Let's see what happens when I do that. There. So it's nice and big, and same with that. And I could always go back in here and paste that picture back in. And now it's a nice big looking eye, a bigger one. Okay, so that's what we're doing there. This is the color that you want it. So you can always change the color. Now keep in mind the colors of your website. So if you were having this green color that you would have copied down that the code for it, the this hex code for it, and you would have found that by finding which particular green color. Now, if you found that this was your main color, you would have had this saved, this code saved somewhere so that you can reuse it and reuse it for any accent coloring that you want to. So there you go. And it would have put that to that color. And so I would use that particular, the same hex code for everything for my colors. Okay, and you can also change the font. Well, in this case, I'm not using a font. I'm using this little picture, so we can leave that. Okay, and this is all controlling the fonts. You can also do animation. So here we go. If I click on this animation thing, now some elements have animations and some don't. But you could have it where it's going to animate like that. So if I say fade in left, okay, it's going to do that. Now what'll happen is, it's usually that happens when you scroll down, and after the page is loaded, it'll animate like that. Okay, so and that's it for something that you need to do there. The subheading, which is this here, has its own tab, and I can change the font, the colors, everything here of this. So sky's the limit to what you can do here. One thing to keep in mind, that when you are designing your site, you want color, but you don't want to bombard your viewer with color, like having, this color all over here or something. I personally, with text, I like to keep it, I like to keep it on maybe a darker grayscale, so it's not in your face black, maybe a little bit darker, so it just has a nice tint to it. It's not overly black, and it's not overbearing. Okay, now what you can do is, if you want to keep some consistency, you can open up a notepad, which I've got here, and I can paste that green, so I can say this is the green color. All right, and then we can go back and we can copy this gray color. So this could be one that we're commonly using for, say, certain titles on here, or headings. So we can just go back to our notepad and paste that in there. Okay, and this would be, okay. So this is building out our main color scheme. So I'm going back to the site now, and I'm going to continue to finish this. And so I'm going to look down here and make sure everything looks as good as I want it to. If I want the font family, for instance, is Lato. If I chose a different font family that I wanted for the theme, and some of the font family that I set there, like for instance, if I wanted that Roboto or whatever we found from Google Fonts, you should be able to find quite a few of them in there. And so in this case, there is only just a subset of fonts that you can use, and bold. So here's the Google Font preview that you can see from this particular Lato, which is a Google Font family. So make sure you can select the one you would prefer in here, and hopefully it's the one that you had selected when you did your theme settings originally, that you can select on that one. And of course you can also animate this. A good rule of thumb is if you're going to be animating stuff, don't overload your website with animation. Just a few things that you want to really kind of point out or have your customer notice, animate that. Don't animate anything else. Too much animation can, again, be overbearing. It doesn't really tell your customer much of anything other than you have stuff flying in everywhere. Only stuff you want to draw attention to, and that's it. And that's a good rule of thumb for animating anything. Extra design options. This particular tab allows us to control how things sit inside of these fields here, okay? And I'm going to just quickly explain this. And once I'm done this, we're going to be moving over to the next video where we complete all of the settings through these blocks or elements. So just explaining how this works will help with any sort of design work that you might be doing on your site. And so I think it's imperative to know this. So here is an example. So this black sort of crayon-y border is going to represent an element, okay, or a some sort of a division, okay? We're going to call it an element. And inside of that is going to be our content. So inside there, my content is my text here. Okay, so this is always is going to be separated, or all of these elements are, and this is an example of another element, are separate from each other. Okay, so what happens is margins are what I'm calling the red, the distance between the black part of my element and this red. So here it's going to dictate how far away this element is going to be from from an adjacent element. That is margins. Now, if this element, this black one over here, didn't have any margins, it would go right up next to it. But if this one also had margins, it would be separated by however distance of the margin there. So this black one would actually be over a little bit further because it has margins as well. So that's how it works. Now the internal part, the distance between this blue line here and the black line, that's padding. So that's how much distance between the edge of that element is and the actual content that you have inside of that element. So if that makes any sense, that's how we need to be doing on the other one. So this element here, which we have the nice rounded borders, is the example of the border of that element. That's this part right here, okay? Or the edge of the element. The margin is the distance between this element and this element, okay? Now, there's been some design work in the background where we don't have, but we have looks like the margin, there's a margin here, which there is, but we're not seeing it here. But we can technically increase that margin, and this will push this this element further away from this element over here. The padding, which they have set, is the distance between probably the edge of these words and the edge of this element. Okay, so they have it on both sides, but the top and bottom have nothing. So you can see here, this button is right on the bottom. So I can actually move this up a certain amount of pixels. Now they're using this VW thing, which we could use. And so I can say this is 1, so it's not completely on the bottom, but a little bit more. And this eyeball is actually kind of, its edge is actually right up here. I can actually do this and go minus 1 VW as an example. And let's see what happens when we do this. So I'm going to save it. And it's going to change. Now we see it's grown a little bit actually. Now we have some distance between this button and the bottom, and this one actually moved down. So let's see if we put, I'll bet you if we put 1, the minus should have worked, but it could be the way that this particular template is working. So minus 10, we can do a PX. PX is pixels. So it interprets it as a pixel. So that this one here is going down. It really should be going up, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry about this one. So 0px, okay, and you know, so if you want to have a little bit of space underneath that button, you can add more padding to it. Now I can also do this, and I can set this one up, this whole element block, a little bit higher. If I go minus, I'll say minus 25 pixels, and let's see what that does. See how this element is up a little bit higher. Now the reason why you might want to do something like that is maybe you want to draw a little bit more attention to this element over some other elements. So you can play around with how these things look and how they appear. This one's being a little bit bigger, so you can actually play around with the margins, even the border. Now the border, this is the thickness of a border around it, which we don't have color of a border. It's white right now, but you can choose a different color. So let's do that. So it's going to have this border around here. So you can even do that to draw some more attention out. And of course, I would use my nifty green color. And I'll just paste that green color in there. Okay, and save the changes. Now there it is. So you can do this, this sort of design work into bringing out more attention to one element over another. And that's how that would work. I would like you to actually go and edit these elements yourself, and I'm going to do a high-speed one here that you can see what I've done. Well, I hope you liked that. That was a quick version of me just making these elements. You could have paused that, or hopefully you did it yourself and made up your own cool little element here. It didn't have to be exactly what I was doing, but as you can see, we've got some blocks. They're different heights, and they are having a little bit of padding, as well as a little bit borders on the side to make it nice, stick in nice. And so I'm going to go ahead and update this, and we're going to actually check our site to see what it looks like. So I'm going to click update and wait for the little message to appear. Click the X button, and what that'll do is it'll refresh the page and let me know, show me exactly how it looks. So we're going to scroll down, and there's our nice elements. You see how they kind of came in. It was now that it's done it once, it's not going to do it again, but that's okay, because like I said, you don't want too much animation. But there it is. Now I just noticed something. I'm missing some stuff around here, and this is why it's good to go and check out to see how it actually looks on your site. So I can quickly fix that. I'm going to go to the visual editor, And I'm going to, once it's loaded, go down to that element and add that padding that I must have missed. So I'm just going to go down there and we're going to click on this, and hey, I spelled this word wrong, so I can change that to the right one, as well as go to design options here and add that. I only put 1 pixel. I should have added this VW, which is a bigger size. Okay, and we're gonna go, and there it is. Okay, I'm gonna update that. So that concludes this video on just making some edits. So future videos, we're gonna create new elements, and we're gonna actually continue down the page and editing some of this stuff, adding some new features, and really getting used to the whole Visual Composer element building capabilities. So hopefully we'll see you on the next video as we continue updating our pages.